Hello everyone, I'm David Weeks, President and Director of Academic Affairs at the National High School Debate League of China. Today we're going to focus on Crossfire, which is a speech that happens 3 times throughout a public forum debate. 1 time after the constructive speeches between the 2 constructive speakers, 1 time after rebuttal speeches between the 2 rebuttal speakers, and 1 time after the summary speeches that involves everyone. So what is the purpose of Crossfire? Well, during Crossfire, you want to do 2 main things. First, and in that order, you want to clarify arguments. That is, you want to make sure that after constructives, you want to make sure that you understand 100% of your opponent's case. You need to understand everything in their case. Now, if you disagree with something that they say, that's fine, but first you want to make sure that you understand what it is that they said. So perhaps you heard some words that you don't understand. Maybe you just didn't know what they meant. Or perhaps you heard and you understood what the arguments said, but you didn't understand why they were true. Or maybe there was some part of the case that was actually substantively confusing to you. In that case, you'll want to clarify the arguments first. Remember that it's very difficult to attack something that you don't understand. So the first thing you have to do in Crossfire is make sure that you understand what your opponents just said. That's true for constructives, but also after rebuttals. You want to make sure that you understand all the attacks that your opponents just made against your case. So step 1 is clarification. The next part of Crossfire, the next purpose, is to set up your next speech. So what do we mean by that? Well, in the first Crossfire, you had constructive speeches, and the speech after that is the rebuttal speech. So the first Crossfire can be used to set up the rebuttal speech. Maybe you can get your opponent to agree to some things. Maybe you can get your opponent to agree to your framework or agree to some definitions. The more agreement you have, the better, because then you can focus on the issues that you disagree about, or the issues where there's real clash in the debate. But also when you're setting up the next speech, you also need to consider probing problems in your opponent's cases, exposing some flaws in the logic of their cases. So you've really got 3 things then. You've got clarification, you've got setting up agreement, and you've got setting up disagreement. The second part to know about Crossfire is how do you actually do it? Well, during Crossfire, both participating members of the debate should stand up. Everyone should stand up, and they should face forward and look directly at the judge. So this seems a bit counterintuitive. This seems a bit strange, because you're talking to each other, yet you're looking straight ahead at the judge. The reason why you do that is that no matter what you do, most of the time you will never persuade your opponents that you are right. They will never simply give up. On the other hand, you can persuade your judge. You probably won't be able to persuade your opponents, but you can persuade your judge. And when you look at someone in the eye, when you make direct eye contact with them, that's a very, very valuable thing. When you look at someone in the eye, it's a lot harder to lie to them. So when you make direct eye contact with your judge, it makes it look like you're being more honest with them, that you're being more sincere, more genuine. So eye contact is good. So make sure that you're making eye contact directly with the judge. Make sure that you're facing forward, standing, looking directly at the judge. So the first thing you'll actually do in Crossfire is deal with the first question. Now, if your team chose to speak first, if you gave the first constructive speech and you're giving the first rebuttal speech, then your team gets to ask the first question. If you're speaking second, you gave the second constructive and the second rebuttal speech, then you must answer the first question in Crossfire. So that can be pretty useful to be able to always ask the first question. So you should always have your first question somewhat prepared. After the first question, either team can ask or answer questions. So if you were second speaker, you had to answer that first question. Well, right after that first question, you're allowed to ask a question in response. So the way Crossfire works is someone asks a question, someone answers that question, and then gives their own question. So it's a crossfire, and then it's an exchange. You can ask questions, and you're expected to answer them. And it's much more interactive and spontaneous than a cross-examination, where there's one person designated as the questioner and one person designated as the person who answers questions. Instead, both people have to answer, both people have to ask.